Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and this is my 15th episode of On the Tube. And there's some pretty cool things that I'm going to be talking about on today's episode. Especially, we're going to be getting started with, I finally got around to watching the second season of Fleabag, and it was one of those things where it's like, it kept popping up on Amazon, and I'm like, I'm finally going to watch it. And bam, the season's only 6 episodes, but from that first episode, things really hook you. And setting up this central relationship between the main character and this priest, and her falling in love with the priest, which obviously is complicated, and all the craziness that goes on at this dinner party to start the season, especially with how things end in the first season with her relationship with her sister and her sister's husband. And Phoebe Waller-Bridge is so fantastic. This show is hilarious. It's emotionally impactful. Every turn, there's some fun cameos from Fiona Shaw, Kristen Scott Thomas, and Andrew Scott is a great addition to this show. And he's funny, he's charismatic. You can see why the main character, Fleabag, connects with him and falls in love with him. And this complex relationship, you get to see her sister's character grow a lot in this season as well. And it's funny. It has a lot of crazy situations, and it builds up nicely throughout the season. And the fourth wall breaking is still hilarious. Her interactions with the audience are one of the best parts of the show. And this show is really great, and I can't wait for a third season to be released. Then there's Ramy. I got to watch season 2, which season 2 coming out sparked me watching the first season, and then I was excited to watch the second season. And Ramy is one of the most frustrating characters I've ever seen in a TV show. Like, he's frustrating level of, like, Howard from Uncut Gems, where it's just, like, everything he does, you're just like, oh, but you're hooked. And there's a lot less relationships with women in this season, because it's more about him trying to get over this particular relationship with his cousin, and this budding relationship with his Sheikh's daughter. And the biggest addition to this show is Mahershala Ali as his new Sheikh, who comes into this season, who has this intensity that he brings to every scene. And that builds and builds and builds. And this season really builds up to such a huge payoff and leaves Ramy in a very precarious state. And this season gets really dark, especially when at the beginning of the season he meets this man who's a former soldier dealing with PTSD and tries to convert him to Islam, and things that happen as a result of that are dark and violent, and this show goes places. But one of the most intriguing things about this show is when it takes a step and looks at other characters. And you really get another great episode for Dina's sister and his mother, but then you get your first real dive into his father, which that episode really hit hard, very emotionally, and then his uncle, who seems like this complete scumbag, and you get to see something he's hiding that he's trying to deal with. And it's very complex and moving, and it's just like, holy crap, this show's amazing. I absolutely love Ramy. You should definitely check it out on Hulu. It's hard to like Ramy, but in general, his escapades bring a lot of humor. There's one particular episode where they go to Atlantic City with him and his friends that brings a lot of humor and some really raunchy humor. But the show deals with a lot of Muslim culture, and I feel like the show really does a great job of engrossing you in it and making you see different kinds of perspectives. And oh boy, I was super excited about this finishing up the second season of What We Do in the Shadows. And I love the film. I'm a huge Taika Waititi fan and Jermaine Clement. And that first season sets up this group of characters so well, and then the second season just runs with it. The real all-star is Colin Robinson, and just every time he gets to sink his teeth into people and just suck them dry with their energy. But there's one particular episode where it's like he gets promoted at work and he becomes super powerful, but he's such a highlight in so many of the episodes of this season. And then Laszlo gets his own episode, and he goes on the run as Jackie Daytona and in Pennsylvania. And that whole episode was absolutely hilarious. Matthew Berry is... him and the actor who plays Colin Robinson are definitely two of the biggest shining lights in the show. And I keep saying that and then realizing, like, everybody's great. Nandor, Naja, and when the Laszlo and Naja come back and make their band again and sing all these absurd songs, Horny for Love, Horny for Blood, and just throughout this whole season, there's this developing complexity of Guillermo and Nandor's relationship, and Guillermo becoming stronger with his ability to kill vampires. And this character development for all these characters goes through the whole season, and it's really impressive because most of the episodes feel very episodic, except it has that anchor. And there's great cameos in this season. Mark Hamill, Haley Joel Osment, Benedict Wong. And I just love this season. The world building was great. They introduced other creatures like trolls. The troll gag is absolutely hilarious, so I won't give it away. But this show is so great. It's hilarious, has great characters, and there's moments that are legitimately freaky. Especially there's an episode where where Guillermo joins a group of vampire hunters led by Craig Robinson, and they go into this house with a bunch of 70s vampires, and it's pretty freaky. And this show's great. This is top-notch comedy, love the characters, and the season finale leaves you at this place where it's just like, I cannot wait for the third season. I got to watch the fourth season of The Americans, and this show is tense and suspenseful and packs so much complexity into its characters. The biggest thing in this season is that their daughter knows about them being spies and the complexities of her dealing with it. But then Philip and Elizabeth are getting to the point where they're questioning things. Seems like Elizabeth might be thinking about religion, and Philip goes to these seminars, and them really struggling with their identity and what their role is in life, and how the show just keeps moving them forward and raising the stakes with one of the biggest payoff storylines in this is Martha, this woman that Philip has been married to, who's a secretary at the CIA, and what happens to her. And as that builds and where that storyline goes. And the biggest drawback of this season for me in particular were a lot of the cutaways to Russia, and I wasn't really interested in the characters that they kept cutting away to in Russia. But in general, this is another great season, and it leaves us, yet again, in a very complicated situation going into the fifth season. I watched Love Life on HBO Max, the first original series that is in some kind of competition and stuff like that, or Looney Tunes, and Anna Kendrick brings a lot of charm to this. She's great, but in general, it just feels like every cliche that you could possibly find in a romantic comedy they just threw into this show, and the really obnoxious, pointed voiceover feels like I'm getting beat over the head with what I could be just experiencing through Anna Kendrick's performance, but instead I'm just dumped all this exposition all the time, and it gets pretty annoying. And I felt like the show was set up in a particular way. It's like it's supposed to be about her love life, and then it shifts to a different character, and then it's her relationship with her mother, and it felt very convoluted at times. But in general, I enjoyed it, and I heard the second season's going to center around a different character, which is interesting. So I guess it's just about different characters' love lives, and it basically is kind of just a throwaway rom-com. And if it wasn't for Anna Kendrick, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. So it's a little disappointing that this is like the first original series that HBO Max brings, but let's see what else they do. They're kind of leaning on, we have HBO. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is the 7th season of Are You Being Served? And I love the show. It's absolutely hilarious, and it always delivers on the laughs. And it was very interesting because the 7th season, it seemed like they were finally going to like push up some of the characters, and there's a lot of that going on in this season about promotion and trying to move up the company ladder. And then they bring in this new character who may or may not have a connection with Captain Peacock, and he's a lot of fun. I enjoyed this character. He was a nice addition. I do miss Mr. Granger, but obviously that actor passed away, and they replaced him in the previous season. Now they got somebody else replacing them, and I'm wondering if that's just going to turn into a revolving door. But I only have like 3 more seasons to catch up on of this show. Watching some more British television, so I'll be having some more to talk about next week on the tube. But you know what? It was pretty great. There were some great shows, great second seasons of Fleabag, Ramy, and What We Do in the Shadows that I got to talk about this week. But let's talk. Comment below, and let's chat about any of the shows that we talked about today. And thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.